I certainly felt alone in it. And I think if you could have a group of people who are going through the process at the same time in order to interact with each other, you realize, first of all, that others are going through the same thing you are. You'd be surprised to find out people who are going through the same thing. Maybe it's in your family that you are. And therefore, you can help each other get through it and land on a place that's really, really important to you.
Welcome to Your Next Big Project is You, a podcast based around the theme of time. Time to be able to press pause on life. Time to reevaluate what's important. Time to reminisce about where you've come from, what you've learned, and what you've accomplished. Time to revisit your goals, dreams, and vision. And time to remember the people in your life. That's it, my friends. If you've got time, fasten your seatbelt and listen in as we discuss opportunities for the next 5 to 25 years of your life. And remember, your next big project is you. Welcome to our podcast. Your next big project is you. And I'm really pleased today to have an old friend, an old client, Dean Manjuris from Toronto, north of the border here from beautiful Buffalo. My good buddy, Dean Manjuris, is joining us. And when I think of Dean Manjuris, I can talk about Dean being a former vice chair and a vice chairman and heading up global investments and starting as an advisor and working himself up the chain of command from financial advice to sales leadership to president, managing director to vice chairman. But when I think of Dean as well, I also think about a gentleman who's unbelievably committed to his family, to his friends, his amazing mentor to many people. So Dean, I want to welcome you to our podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Leo, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation to come and be part of this. You know, you introduced. I'm not sure I recognize the person that you spoke glowingly about, because at the end of the day, I'm just a person like everybody else. You talked about me being a client. I always viewed you as a partner, and you were an integral and important partner in the business. And you were a big part of the reason why we were able to move our business and succeed in the way we did. So thanks for inviting me, and thank you very much for all you've done for me.
Well, good. You know, our listeners have got a lot of good things to hear about your story and your journey. And what's interesting is that you re-entered the business world in a way after you retired at an early age. I believe it would be a good place to start, Dean, to talk about that entry point and some of your passions, and tell us about that journey from your own perspective, please.
So I think maybe the best way to start this, Leo, is to go back to the things that are really, really important to me. And it starts first and foremost with my family. And everything else follows that. So number one in my life is my family. The number two thing that's really important to me is about making a difference by helping people, making a difference in my community, and making a difference in the world in general. And lastly are my passions. The investment business is one of my passions. And from 12 years old, I was lying in front of this old Marconi black and white TV, picking stocks out of the newspaper, underlining them, pretending I had 25,000 and then tracking them on graph paper. But another big part of my passion is the music business. And I can still remember this day, walking into my sister's bedroom on her old transistor radio, and the Beatles came on, and I was done. It captured me. So when you talk about me retiring and re-entering, they were all around the passions. The reason I spent 28 years in the investment business in various roles, each of which, looking back, prepared me for the next role that I took on. And I was mentored by some of the top people, I believe, in the investment business in Canada, and a number of my beliefs come from them. But I retired for a couple of specific reasons. And it was the first time in my life that I actually chose to look after myself and my family over everything else. So we've just come through the financial crisis of '08 and '09, which, as you recall, and others who were around at the time will recall, is a very, very stressful time. The financial system literally was on the edge of imploding. And so
Yeah.
it was difficult to manage that through that time and exude confidence when, in the back of my mind, I was wondering whether the system was going to survive. But then I had a specific health issue. I suffered a major concussion doing a very Canadian thing, playing Monday night hockey. But at the same time, and for the previous, actually going back to 2001, one of our kids was having a very difficult time health-wise, suffering from anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder, which was causing major disruption in our family. So you've got these three elements converging and was making it very, very difficult to manage through that, both personally and for my family. So I initially took a leave of absence, realized during that time, you know what, I'm going to have to leave the business in order to look after the number one priority in my life, which was my family. And
Right.
so that's what I did. I retired from the business, but I kept my finger in it through some minor consulting contracts, as well as keeping in touch with people, including yourself from time to time. But the thing that didn't leave me were my passions and my desire to make a difference. And that's where music came in. And interesting enough, I brought up, just to remind myself for this podcast, about what was important to me in the music business. And if you just allow me a second to read it, it's the name of the company was FOD Records, which stands for Field of Dreams. And this is who we are. We make great music that helps people make connections with themselves, others, and the world around them. We're defined by our artists, the music we make, and the connections we help to create, the respect and dignity we have for each other and our community. We want to inspire the human spirit, one person with one song at a time. So when you think about the things that are important to me, and number two being wanting to make a difference,
Right.
that fits right into it. So I spent 10 years doing that, and it got to the point where it needed a big company behind it, one of the big ones, in order to take it to the next step. So I exiting the music business, and then starting to think again about myself, about things that were important to me, my family, making a difference. And my passion for the investment business, and I kept coming back to that. And people were encouraging me. You and I hadn't talked to each other for a few years. We reconnected. We got together and just started talking about it. And I did that with you because of the respect I have for you and the friendship I have for you. And I did it with some of the others up here in Canada. And word somehow got out, and I re-entered, but it's all because I want to make a difference. That's where that went.
Yeah.
A long-winded way of answering your question.
Well, I'm assuming you still retired from hockey, so you no more concussions, hopefully, and things like that. But I bet you're itching to get back on the ice, knowing you.
Yeah.
To do that, and I think of your all the things you've accomplished from the investing world, the global wealth management world, the music world. I mean, you led a pretty large and significant organization in your time. A couple thousand plus people under your stewardship, your watch, your command. Your board work at the organization, things. What do you miss most about that part of your work in terms of leading a significant organization to success?
There's three specific things I miss. First and foremost is I miss the people. I started to think, how can I articulate what that means? And I'm having difficulty articulating, other than it's the friendships you develop, it's the camaraderie you develop, it's the working together through difficult times and great times. It's the working together as a team towards a common goal. And it's the intellectual challenge that that hits us every day, and we work together on that. So that is the thing that I miss the most. And that's what gravitated back to me and why I gravitated back to the business.
Yeah. You know, Dean, I remember sitting down with you as well, and you've got strong business beliefs as well, things that you've learned, your philosophies. We could couch them as your opinions, your perspectives on what you would share with someone who is trying to succeed today in life in general and in business. What are some of those beliefs that you carry with you to this day?
So I have what I would categorize, Leo, as two types of beliefs. One is my beliefs about what drives success in the investment business, and I can articulate those. And then there's a separate set of beliefs, which I believe are key to an individual who is in leadership position. So I can talk about both those things if that makes sense to you.
Sure. Yeah. Let's go through them.
Okay. So first and foremost is my beliefs on what allows success and this is the wealth management part of the business. So first and foremost, I believe in the strength of the relationship between an advisor and a client. I believe that relationship requires an entrepreneurial environment in order to flourish that recognizes diverse business models. And I believe you need a powerful firm behind you in order to thrive. I believe in the capital markets. It's the best way that brings people with money and together with people with ideas in order to drive our economies and the Western world forward. So from time to time, you go through tough times, but over time, the value of advice has increased. And I believe in the undisputed pursuit of being extraordinary. It's not good. It's not great. It's not about built to last, good to great. It's extraordinary. And when you hear the word extraordinary, it makes you feel something. To me, it's an emotional word.
Right.
Good or great. Everybody talks about being good or being great, but emotional is extraordinary. It's like when you're taking off on an airplane and you're flying up altitudes, right? Gets a little bumpy. You go up through the clouds, and then you hit above, and it's nothing but sunshine and smooth air. And that to me is what extraordinary is all about. And it's about how you live your life. It's about through osmosis, through others. You challenge each other to be absolutely extraordinary in everything you do. So those are my beliefs about the wealth side. In terms of leadership, you take that as by extension and say the tone is always set at the top. The leader of the business is the one that will set the tone for the business. And I used to think of myself often as the chief culture officer, not
sure.
And because I was the one that set the tone. I have other beliefs that if you lose control of your pricing, you lose control of your business. And so it's really, really important to understand the value that you bring to whatever relationship you have. And that value is not determined in that moment or in the past year. It's determined throughout your career and how you've grown and the investments you've made in yourself to get you to that point in time. I believe in transparency and communication. And you communicate, you're out in front, you're honest about situations. You don't whitewash them over. People are intelligent. I make the assumption people are intelligent. They're certainly smarter than I am in this business. And it's really important that people know what's going on, because if you believe in working together as a team towards a common goal, you have to give them the information from which they can help work together as a team to solve whatever problem it is you're looking to solve. I think it's really important that you have an understanding of people you have humanity in how you operate, and you understand uh, what what drives people. So I think those two things together certainly allowed me to have
Right.
some degree of success, but it wasn't all me. Like it was everybody around me, which brings me to the last point. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Last point about leadership is that any success is shared, and any issues or any downside, the leader owns wholly, and nobody else owns it.
You know what's cool about that, Dean, is you've seamlessly integrated the beliefs from the business world, from investing and the oversight of wealth management, from advisors, from a senior level of an organization to that end client, but also your beliefs fundamentally about being a good leader and things. And I remember rewinding the clock with you of having a number of skeptical and somewhat indifferent folks underneath you, where what you said, setting the tone. And you had to set the tone. And when you used a big word like extraordinary, where some people didn't like the word, right? And one of the things, I was talking to a friend last week, and I said, you know what, when you're really committed to that, you don't apologize for the pursuit of being extraordinary or pursuit of excellence. Why would we, we shouldn't feel like this is a worthy pursuit. And I remember when you were preaching from the pulpit, so to speak, when you would talk about partnering, when you would talk about investing, you would talk about being entrepreneurial, you would talk about that pursuit of being extraordinary. Indifference and skepticism, it levels below you when they hear it over and over and over again, and they see you setting the tone, starts to make a difference. And that's where I wanted to go with my next question for you, is because I know you made a difference in the lives of many individuals, both in that career pursuit in the investment wealth management industry, as well as the music industry. What are your thoughts here? Because making a difference in your next big project is what our podcast is all about. And one of the key areas is living a life of significance, making a meaningful difference in the lives of others. What does that mean to you when you think about some of those relationships of people's lives that you were able to impact over the years?
When I hear that question, Leo, the first thing that comes to mind is that all these people made a difference in my life.
Right.
Every single one of them made a difference in my life. What I tried to do was be in a position and support them and support their families in whatever it is that they were striving to do. So that's the first comment but thinking more about this, it's what's being the next project is me, and for others the next project is them. It made me think about the move I made from the investment business to the music business, and that move was all about me sitting down and thinking, okay, like for the first time in my life, I'm thinking about me and my family. Mm. I'm putting myself, okay, what's important to me? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go with the next stage of my life? And it wasn't an easy thing to think about. You really had to get deep down into yourself, effectively deep down into your soul. I used to write things out in journals. I would be walking, maybe I'd go to a coffee shop and sit outside and have a coffee maybe in the morning. But I always carried my journal with me, and I would write out how I was feeling as I was going through this process. And I still have those journals, and from time to time I still go back through them in order to think about, or in order to see, am I still on track with what it is that was really important to me. The thing that was driving me though was to make a difference. And how was I going to be able to make a difference with my family, and how was I going to be able to make a difference in my life for others? And so I went through that 10-year experience. So I don't know if I'm answering your question when I talk about it, but it brings in a total introspection on who you are, what you're all about, and what you want to do. What I didn't have, which is something that you're proposing, is I didn't have the benefit of working with someone like you, nor did I have a benefit of working with others who are going through the same process at the same time. And looking back at what I did, I could have used that big time, because while you feel like you're the only one going through it, or I certainly felt alone in it. And I think if you could have a group of people who are going through the process at the same time in order to interact with each other, you realize, first of all, that others are going through the same thing you are. You'd be surprised to find out people who are going through the same thing. Maybe it's in your family that you are. And therefore you can help each other get through it and land on a place that's really, really important to you.
Yeah, what we found, Dean, and when I talk to people about next big project being you, is that there's a lot of similar issues as it relates to health, maybe relationships, issues on the personal front, career. It's amazing when you're around 20 or so like-minded people who've all achieved a lot, or at a point in their life in going through focused introspection on, geez, what's next? And that's why I was curious on your end here, knowing that you've got a lot on your plate, even right now, even post-retirement, where you've re-entered, you become a vice chair, a strategic advisor to a board right now, helping them to look at client acquisitions, strategic acquisitions, mergers, other, development issues within an advisory force, things like this. When you think about your future, how will you continue to make a difference? Is there 1, 2, or 3 things that build off of your core value system, whether it be family, your love for the investment field, your passion for being around cool people and trying to help them, but they're helping you in return. So what are some of the things that are keeping you up at night, or you're excited about in areas that you want to continue to make a difference on?
So I before I answer that question, Leo, it's really, really interesting that yesterday news came out that Charlie Watts died. For me, as a drummer, I started playing the drums at 7 years old. So I'm of the generation of Charlie Watts and Ringo Starr, John Bonham and Keith Moon and others. But my two drumming heroes are Charlie Watts and Ringo Starr. This is the first one of that kind of ilk who lived a full life and has passed away. And it's really got to me. When John Lennon died, I was a big John Lennon fan, but when John Lennon died, I didn't feel like this, nor when George Harrison died. Others, John Entwistle, who's the bass player for The Who, died, or Keith Moon way back when. But for the first time, Charlie Watts, at the age of 80, was passed on, one of my heroes, and it started me thinking again, what's next for me? Because I'm 66, going to be 67 in December. I thought I'd already gone through that and was coming up, and it's right back in my mind, again. So I'm now thinking about next step. What's next for me, my wife, and my family in our lives. So I preface the answer to your question by that. So I've re-entered. I'm nowhere near involved in the business like I was before. I was truly running the business before. So it was 24/7, all year round, on call, right? You're on call. Others are on call. I was on call.
Right.
But now it's more of an advisory, mentor, coaching role, and passing on any expertise or any thoughts that I have to make a business run more. So it allows me to satisfy this need to make a difference, but at the same time gives me the freedom to have time for myself, my wife, and my family. And one of the great joys that's happening is that our kids are all in their 30s now, and we're seeing them flourish, especially in fact, all three of them. They're all flourish. It brings it brings us a great deal of joy. Our son was able to come home a couple of weeks ago. The middle boy, who was the one who was sick, he was able to come home a couple of weeks ago. First time we've seen him because of the pandemic since December 2019. And we had everybody together with partners and significant others in our backyard for a barbecue. I can't tell you how that made me made me feel.
Wow.
So I have time, and so what else can I be doing to help others?
You know, it's interesting when you look at that gap, someone you admired from the music industry, one of the folks that you truly enjoyed watching play at their best in the music that they participated in, being 80, his demise, you being 66, 67 range, the 13, 14-year window, that gap. Why do you think it hit you as hard as it did? You've lost other people in the business world, I know. This is the first time you've told me about something like this, but this one seemed to touch your heart and soul differently.
Yeah, it did. It because was part of my whole life. Literally it's been part of 59 of my 66 years. And so I think it reinforces this notion of mortality with us. Wait a second, and even yesterday when I went for a walk, we're at the end of our street's a big ravine system. I love to go walking through there. I just started thinking, how much time do I really have left? And health-wise,
what's really important, right?
What's really
just
important?
Going through this.
I mean, I can
got
tell
a
you
little
that
tape delay here, Dean, right now. I'm not sure you've frozen on me.
Our
internet connection.
There we go.
There we go.
I can tell you that the reason I hold the drumsticks the way I do, I hold them in two ways. I was taught the way Charlie Watts holds them, which is a jazz way. And depending on the song, I'll morph it to the double-handed way, which is the way Ringo Starr held them. And in certain songs, I have to switch the way I hold the sticks in order to be able to play the song properly.
Oh boy.
That's, so it hits you. Like, I'm 8 years old learning how to switch ways. This guy was these two people were part of my life that whole time, and now bang, one of them's gone.
It's like a 60-year ride.
Yeah.
Of learning how to hold these drumsticks, and the music that came out of your hands is a result of the influence from them.
Yeah.
Just a couple of other questions here. When you think of going back to some of these leaders and things that you're around day in and day out, what are some of the successful ones that you see day in and day out today? What are they doing to truly make a difference in the lives of people that they are leading, managing, coaching? What are some things that you look at when you're guiding and mentoring leaders today? You say, that person's got it. That was good. That stood out. That's something that we need to raise the bar there with other folks. What are some of these things that hit you in those areas when you observe them?
I think there's two main areas. The first one is that they exhibit humanity in all their dealings. That they genuinely care about all their people. They care about how successful they're going to be and helping them succeed. They care about how their spouses and their or significant others and their families are doing, and they treat people a certain way. So I think that is really, really, really important. I can't emphasize that enough. And it comes in all sorts of forms, and it could be a really small thing, or it could be a larger thing. I'll give you an example. In the years following 9/11, we were on the 72 floor building, and we were on the 49th floor. So we went through fire drills and evacuation drills. And one of our the people who actually had an office down the hall from me, and she was really good on the operations side, was physically challenged. And so she could not go down the stairs, the fireproof stairs. She had to wait for the freight elevator in order to take part in these drills. And I finally said to her one day, I said, that may be how we do the drill, but I'm going to tell you right now that if we have, God forbid, but if we have an issue, I'm going to piggyback you down those stairs, and you're going to be with the rest of us when we evacuate the building and go out. And then I worked with another person, and we came to an agreement that the two of us would be the ones we would trade off each other as we took it. That to me is an example of it's a small thing, but it's a large thing, which shows, you know what, we care about everybody in this thing. The second thing I would say is that a leader needs to, and I get back to the point I made earlier, effectively be the chief culture officer. You dictate from the top, you say, here's what we're all about, and here's how we're going to behave, and you follow up on that.
Yeah.
You use the examples of me going forward and everywhere. That's what I did. And I did it on purpose. Everywhere I went, every meeting I had, whether it was a single one-on-one meeting or a branch meeting or a national meeting, every communication piece I sent out, everything would involve what we were, who we were, and what we were all about. And I would give examples about that and the need to reinforce that. So over time, the culture begins to shift in the organization. And for those who put up a barrier against it, I would invite them in to be part of the solution. So
Wow.
This notion of being extraordinary, I would say, you're telling me that you don't get up every morning and look yourself in the mirror before you go to work, and you don't think about wanting to be the best or extraordinary. I find that hard to believe.
You know, that whole pursuit of extraordinary from your business days, and your kids are in their 30s now, but they weren't in their 30s at the time that you were challenging an organization to be extraordinary. They were in their middle teens to 20s, whatever like that. And you were traveling all over the country. I know that from working with you. How are you able to balance the family dynamic, being, a devoted husband, a devoted father, and an unbelievably committed leader with humanity and being chief culture officer in mind? You had all these roles in your life that you're leading. How are you keeping all that in balance?
Well, first and foremost, I'm married to the best person I could ever be married to, and I love her dearly. And so she was able to play a role in that. So she was like the rock in my life. She remains the rock in my life. But I had some personal rules when I was traveling, that I would never stay overnight unless I had to. And so the flights to the West Coast, which are long, would require me to stay overnight. But I would fit in all of these things. I would get out there, in the first flight, go through everything, deal with the thing the next day that I had to deal with, and then come back. And anywhere else, it would just be a day trip. Whether it's to the prairies, that would be a day trip. I can tell you a story of, we had to replace a manager in our Halifax office, which is on the east coast of Canada. It's an hour 45, 2-hour flight from Toronto. So I flew out there as I had to deal with it. That night was my daughter's Christmas concert. I dealt with all of that. I got the flight back to be able to be at her Christmas concert. And I caught the next flight in the morning back to Halifax so I could continue to deal with it. And then I came back that evening. So I wasn't going to let myself miss or not be part of things in my family unless it was absolutely critical that I do so.
Wow. Never ends. You see, it's funny, you're just constantly thinking about being in balance. And that's what I've shared with people as well. I said, it's a very difficult, ongoing, daily pursuit. And when you're constantly thinking of family first and balancing it with the leadership traits and qualities, chief cultural officer, all things you need to do, just knowing that's top of mind all the time is in essence part of that balancing act.
Absolutely.
Knowing that I've got to stay balanced here. I got to pick up the phone and call her today. I got to check in with the kids. I got to attend to these strategic issues that are on my desk. A leader called me from here. A leader called me from there. An advisor needs me here. It's constant figuring out how to prioritize and how to stay on top of things. Hey, Dean, one final question for you. I had some fun. You remember in our, I talked to people about your next big project is you. There are 7 categories. It talks about leading a life with significance, leading a life with no regrets, the role that abundance, gratitude, perspective play, being your best, as well as living your legacy. Do one of those 7 areas jump out at you?
I think the legacy is the thing that immediately comes to mind.
Living your legacy. Okay, so living your legacy.
Yikes.
I got a couple cards here, partner. I got a couple cards here.
Uh-oh.
We're going to end this.
You're dealing from the bottom?
Here's a card. I'm going to turn it over. And here's the question says, what do you believe your legacy is now?
Wow. I believe, is someone who cared about his family and about others. I think it's as simple as that. And you hit me, I hadn't thought about it. And often that's the right answer to give, is the one that you immediately comes to mind when you think about it. So
just gave you the 2x4 just smacked you real quick at the end of this right here, just to get a quick response. Hey, listen, in the memory and the spirit of Charlie Watts, one of the folks, and I'm picturing you with a pen and a pencil holding those drumsticks right now. I'm sure maybe you'll even hit your old snare drum or something today.
Yeah.
And thinking of that memory, I just want to thank you, Dean, for the leadership, the impact that you had on organizations, individuals, your family, how you're bringing it to people like me day in and day out. You truly are making a difference. And you're one of the folks I know that has figured out that elegant ride and seamless integration of family passions and making a difference. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's an absolute pleasure to hear from you. And thanks again. And remember, your next big project is you.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you for the invitation. It was my pleasure.
Thanks, buddy.
Okay.